Welcome to a very, very boisterous and loud Westminster, where here I am with my backpack as well, but in my suit, having to take the afternoon off to come and cover a very historic and momentous event in central London. If you see to the right of me are huge crowds of demonstrators, and they're demonstrating against the visit of Donald Trump to London. A visit mired in controversy. It comes at a time where the Prime Minister himself is mired in controversy, especially over Peter Mandelson and the links to Jeffrey Epstein. And if you remember yesterday, led by donkeys, the campaign group shined a picture of Epstein, Trump and Mandelson onto the Castle of Windsor, where he was being hosted for a banquet. But there is a large crowd over here, overwhelmingly in a very festive kind of mood. There's not been any chants which have been of anger, but there's been a lot of calls for justice for Palestinians. What I'm going to do over the next hour is try and give you a sense of what's taking place, because you've obviously, you maybe have not been able to make it to this venue. We are in Parliament Square. In front of me is the beautiful Palace of Westminster, as you can see. Always a lovely, lovely building, and it's always one of those instances which provides a fantastic backdrop to everything that's going on. The speech is taking place, hosted by Nish Kumar, the very famous comedian, and we've now got Zara Sultana who's going to speak something. Say a few words. So what we're going to do, we're going to walk around, hopefully try and get some of those speakers to interview me. So let's walk around behind the stage and I'll give you a sense of what's taking place all around the square. Just to ask the cameraman, if you go in that direction, you've got about 5 pro-Israel supporters, I believe, which shows the depth of their support. There's nobody here, basically. 10 maybe, if that. Usually there's a very boisterous crowd with speakers, normally about 100 or so, but not even that number's here today. There is police around the area. There's not loads of police officers, you know. You've been to these demonstrations and sometimes you see police upon police, but today it's not that many. They've kept a bit of a low-key approach, which I suppose in the circumstances is not a bad idea. Now, let's go over here. Let's go over here to what is a very important juxtaposition, and I think it's important to see. This is the statue of Nelson Mandela, the very famous anti-apartheid campaigner, and many accuse of Israel of having an apartheid system. And when I say accuse Israel, we're talking about human rights organizations, Amnesty International, the Israeli human rights organization B'Tselem, the US human rights organization's Human Rights Watch. And he was once regarded as a terrorist by none other than Margaret Thatcher, somebody who's regarded as one of Britain's great prime ministers. And now his statue is obviously a very prominent feature of Parliament Square. Yeah, so this is obviously just a little bit to the side. Sir, do you want to say a few words as to why you're here today?
Just for the provision of sanity in this country, opposing a president who incites racism, violence against women, amidst so many other crimes against just people trying to go about their daily lives, as well as the small matter of arming and funding genocidal actions on the people of Gaza.
Just to put a counter-narrative to you, if you don't mind me saying it, some say that the US-UK relationship is so important. You know, Donald Trump has come with the Microsoft executive. They're investing billions of dollars into this country, well, pounds if you want to call it pounds. Is that not a consideration when you're talking about the issues that you mentioned, or do genocide and acts of absolute inhumanity taking place in the Middle East count for something?
It's all very well us, living the lives we want to live both economically and socially, but why do people in the Middle East and other parts of the world not matter? I don't trust Donald Trump to, bring the economic stability that He may imply he will, but based on the fact that he's imposed tariffs on various other countries across the world, and the general argument that we need to solidify and maintain our special relationship with the US, that didn't pay off when we did the same or try to do the same with George W. Bush. So I just don't buy the argument that, you know, all of this economic incentive that he might bring is in any way comparable to the sacrifices and the costs that this country will suffer, and that many other people across the world will suffer if we continue to entertain this man and his sentiments, quite frankly. I think the majority of the 116 or so thousand who attended at the United Kingdom rally are people who are simply deprived of social and they're just completely economically and socially deprived. I think they've been subject to a lack of investment in public services, in the basic facets of a country organising and functioning for the working class. And I think they've just resorted to the people who are the only people that they perceive to be listening to them. I don't believe that they buy into the views of Tommy Robinson or Nigel Farage or Donald Trump. I think they just want somebody to vent the anger that they feel on the inside to the powers that be. I feel that, you know, the vast majority of people in this country, decent people, are opposed to genocidal actions, are opposed to violence, are opposed to racism, are welcoming of migrants here and the benefits they bring to this country, whilst also acknowledging and pointing out that it does need to be controlled, and that the share of the sort of demographics of the whole population needs to be far more even, and it shouldn't just be working class communities who are having to, you know, be the main payers of, you know, the sort of services that migrants require. I think there are a lot of people in this country who are siphoning money out of public services and storing it in offshore accounts to avoid paying tax, and that's costing the working class, including those who come here for want of a better life and for need of a better life, as migrants themselves. So I think there's a far bigger picture to look at than just a case of, you know, it's us against, you know, those who might be coming here to seek refuge.
Keir Starmer has been in a lot of trouble politically this last week, especially with his having to have his deputy prime minister, having to sack her, and then obviously later on having to sack Peter Mandelson, the US ambassador, because of his links to Jeffrey Epstein. Do you believe there's a fundamental problem with this Labour government in terms of the priorities for people, as opposed to an agenda where some accuse them of trying to just continue the economics of the past and not giving real change or meaningful policies to bring about real change?
I do. I think Keir Starmer is too obsessed with the purging of certain factions within the Labour Party. He's too internalised, and he's very much living in a bubble which prevents him from being in touch with the problems that the real world face and the general population face. He was elected on the prospectus of, you know, bargaining with trade unions. He was obviously, I mean, I know he wasn't particularly sympathetic to striking workers during the disputes a couple of years back, but he was elected on the prospectus of repealing anti-trade union laws and that sort of thing. He was very much sort of promoting this idea that he's more in touch with working people and he's more identified with working class people than his predecessors. And he's not lived up to that at all. Instead, as I say, he's been prioritising purging the left-wing faction, if that's probably the wrong word, but the sort of
left of the party.
Exactly, yeah. He's been intent on just stamping that presence out, you know, getting rid of very good.
Some say he's pandering to those on the right, not the far right. I don't want to accuse him of that, but certainly to those on the right. And his priority should be to actually get people on the left behind his banner, and the banner needs to be more progressive, more inclusive, so as to take on the threat from the right. Why do you think he's not doing that, or he hasn't done that so far? Is it because of his obsession with perhaps defeating those who would support Corbyn or be naturally on the left of the party?
I don't think it's his political. I don't. He doesn't give a lot away in terms of what he actually believes. I think the Labour Party took a hounding from the mainstream media when Corbyn got beat in 2019. They were struggling to make their minds up on what their Brexit strategy would be and all of that. So he was very much intent on stamping out any sort of lasting legacy that Corbyn may have left, because Corbyn, he appealed to people like me, like the slightly younger section of the population. There were so many young people who were inspired by a relatively older leader, which is something that I don't think many other leaders...
And that manifesto was quite attractive, wasn't it?
It was a progressive manifesto. It wasn't regressive. It reached out to working people, for the many, not the few. He wasn't prioritising, you know, retaining the investment of a select few of the super rich. He was intent on bringing the working class and levelling up the sort of population, reducing the gap between the working class, the poorest and the richest in society. I think Starmer probably admires that deep down, but he knows that if he's to get any sort of meat, and he did it quite successfully in the run-up to 2024 election, he knows that if he's to get the right media attention, he needs to purge that section of the Labour Party, which were perceived to have, let the country down and let its members down in terms of its Brexit strategy. They didn't necessarily make their minds up, and I think a lot of people within the Labour Party were so intent on opposing the final deal of Brexit that Boris proclaimed. And
But have things now moved, because with Trump coming back into power, the rise and the sweep of populism, right-wing populism, sweeping the globe, and certainly in this country, where you've got the prospect of Nigel Farage and obviously Tommy Robinson being the foot soldiers, I suppose, even though he does distance himself from them. Is that now the priority, and that is could that be why so many people have attended today?
I think so, and I think Nigel Farage, for however dangerous he might be, he's a very effective politician. He's very, very good oratorically, and a lot of people do sort of.
He has a common touch.
Yeah, and he the passion is there for all to see. I don't get that impression with Keir Starmer. And that's not to sound like as though I'm more of an admirer of Farage. I think he's very dangerous, and I think it would be a disaster if he was Prime Minister. But the point is, nobody feels inspired by this Labour Party and those at the forefront of their message. Nobody feels as though they will be they will dig us out of a rut that we're currently in.
So was it a mistake for him to invite Trump this early into his prime ministership?
Well, tactically, I'm probably not in a position to answer that, but it's a mistake in that he is endorsing, to some degree, a president who has got a track record. He's a convicted felon. He's got a track record of violence against women, of racism. He's imposing tariffs on a number of countries that rely on trade between themselves and America. He's funding the Israeli army and the IDF. I don't know how it can't be perceived as a mistake to try and develop a relationship with this man. Regardless of how strategically clever or unclever it might be, that's not my main concern.
Many people are very enthused about your party. You're obviously leading that. What's the next stage? What can people expect? There are meetings taking place up and down the country, and I know many of our viewers are very, very enthused about joining your movement or being involved. Tell us what's going to happen.
So we are organising a democratic conference, the largest democratic conference, I think, in recent British history, if ever. And that will be taking place at the end of November. We will have one member, one vote. So every person that signs up to be a member for our party will have their voice heard. And this is not an MP-led exercise. This is going to be bottom-up democracy. And like you said, there are events and meetings happening up and down this country. I've been to Newcastle, Bristol, I've been to Exeter, I've been to South London. I've got events happening all over the place, and we just want as many people to get involved, because this is a new way of doing politics that doesn't take communities, no matter who they are and where they are, for granted.
Listen, first of all, congratulations on your appointment to a massive organisation making huge waves across the world. Tell us a little bit about that appointment first before I interview you.
Well, I've just taken over as the new CEO of Friends of the Earth, one of the largest environmental organisations, justice organisations, both in the UK and part of the largest environmental justice network in the world.
I still see you've got that fiery rhetoric that you had many, many decades ago. Is that because whilst we're 20 years after we were active in East London, the issues remain the same? Poverty, war, oppression, and obviously right now a genocide taking place. Obviously it was Iraq at that time, now it's Palestine and the Palestinians. The world seems to have changed dramatically. It seems to be very, very divided. Why is that? What's happened in between the last 2 decades?
So I think what we've seen is a real crisis of inequality, and our democracy being hollowed out. The billionaires are now, of course, spreading misinformation. Social media is polarising society. And the billionaires know, whether it's the climate crisis, inequality crisis, all of these things, that their only way to continue to maintain their dominance is to divide people, is to spread bigotry, and it's why so much money is coming from the United States to fund the far right. The far right, when they were stood here last week with 100,000 people, a lot of money has gone behind them. That money is coming from dark sources, because from the fossil fuel industry, from powerful billionaires. So we are in a moment of deep division, absolutely, and we're in a moment of multiple crises. You know, I'm from Pakistan. Only look at Pakistan right now. You see either one week it's floods destroying people's homes. The next week it's heat waves of 53 degrees. And here is, a population which is barely struggling to survive, where one shock puts them out there. We look at this country and we look at ordinary people, many Asian, Muslims. We're living in some of the worst housing. We can't pay energy bills. Food prices are going up. The world as we know it is breaking. And we're faced with a choice. Either we're going to have solidarity and cooperation, we're going to fix these problems together, or we're going to have the division and bigotry. I think we've seen something profoundly very, very different. First of all, back in the 1970s, with the National Front, or back in the 2000s and 80s and 90s with the British National Party and the Rights for Whites Camp, we always understood that you could not allow them to gain power, to control the streets. We could not allow them to organise and spread their poison. And we organised against them and we drove them out of East London. But now they can spread their lies, spread their poison online. And the social media, the algorithms are driving people towards far-right conspiracy theories. Lies that are told now can be spread instantly and get millions of views within a day. And that, as we know, has been one of the things that we've challenged. Secondly, absolutely that today we are in a time when Islamophobia is a respectable form of racism. Even in the worst moments of the 1970s and 2000s, politicians would say that they would separate themselves from the right. They created a moral distance between themselves. But now what is said on the streets by the fascists is echoed in Parliament by mainstream politicians, not just from the Conservative Party and Reform, but also from the government. We see the demonising of migrants. We see all those. And what's the lesson we all know is that when politicians play the race card, when they popularise racism, black and brown people pay for it with blood on the streets. We saw that last year, as we saw images of people being dragged out of taxis, of mosques being attacked, that racism has become normal again. And Donald Trump coming here is part and parcel of that normalising of racism. Of Israel bombing and murdering the Palestinians is part of that normalising racism. It says you are less than human and you don't count. And that politics is the politics of division. The way to heal that and bring that, as we know, is to connect people again with a vision of hope. So look, I was out here on Saturday opposing the fascists because I think that's what we've got to do. We cannot allow them to think that they are the majority. They're not the majority. We have to be hard on their politics. But we also have to understand two things. One, whilst every racist in this country was marching, not everybody who marched was a racist. There are also lots of people who are looking for answers. They feel anger. They feel let down. They feel
austerity.
Of course it is. Look, I'm originally from Burnley in Lancashire. These left behind towns which have been hollowed out, where there's no hope for people. And in that, fascism and racism breeds, because people say, look, I will tell you who's to blame. It's Mr. Khan down the road. It's that shopkeeper. It's that migrant, and they can name. And we have to answer that with something different. So, yes, at the moment, the trajectory looks like the Reform could either be the largest single party. I don't think they'll be the government, largest one single. We have to stop that. That's 4 years for us to offer something better to people and say they are not the answer. These are people who are backed by billionaires. They're not going to deal with the fact that you don't have housing. They're not going to deal with the fact that you can't pay your energy bills. All that they are going to do is make you blame other people whilst they get richer and richer and richer. So we have to point out who the real enemy of ordinary people is and find real common ground, because for many people in the Muslim community, we live in the poorest housing in this country. We work in some of the poorest jobs, 0-hour contracts. We are fighting for the living wage, but so do many white working class communities. They live in the poorest houses. So we have a common fight. Let's build more housing. Let's make sure we actually have affordable food. Let's think about our energy system. Actually, let's put solar panels on our schools and our buildings and make that energy ours, and make sure that the poorest people in our community can afford that energy. So there's a lot of solutions. What we lack is political will, and political will means we cannot, as a community, turn our back, because the lesson we know from the 1930s, from the 1970s, is if we turn our back, these racists and fascists will continue to grow, and they will threaten us. And we will not be safe by saying, well, we're in East London, we're safe because we're in a big black community. We know that they are getting more and more confident, and they're getting more and more confident, and that is a danger to all of us. So we have to organise, we have to make sure our voices are being heard, we have to make sure our voices are being heard in that parliament, but we also have to make sure our institutions, whether they're mosques and community organisations, are not turning their backs, are not being scared, are actively going out and saying, we stand with ordinary working people, because we are working people in this country.
I said, honestly, I'm not going to ask any more questions, but I'll just leave you with a comment. I felt inspired by what you said, and it does take me back all those decades when you were a very prominent anti-war campaigner. I'd really love to ask you to come in and do a one-to-one with me, because you're somebody that can inspire a lot of people that watch our programs, but also somebody who's got a story to tell.
Of course, no problem at all.
Thank you so much, Asad.
I mean, look, I've as you know, I've worked on anti-racism and anti-war, and I've spent decades on climate, because our communities, whether they're back home or here, we're going to be on the front lines. So we need to understand these crises, and we need to make sure that we're putting forward the solutions.
Hi there. I've got terminal cancer, so this might be my last chance to stick it to...
I'm so sorry to hear that. You look quite radiant.
I couldn't not come. How could I not? I feel very strongly that it's not much, but it's all I've got.
Is it the wrong time to be calling someone like Donald Trump to this country? Do you think the Prime Minister has got the timing wrong, or should he not be invited at all?
I mean, should we be bringing convicted felons into this country, full stop? I appreciate it was between a rock and a hard place, and for diplomacy's sake, he did what he thought he had to do, but it's not great timing now, is it, really? So.
Very finally, have you come from far?
I live in Kent.
You live in Kent. Okay, nice. Garden of England. Listen, I'll leave you to it. Thank you so much for your time, and all the best. What's the question? Are you saying, why did you choose Trump?
Why would you elect someone who, and I have saved some of the names, I could have put more on here, but he has been shown to be a liar. Look at the election thing that he claimed he'd won when he obviously hadn't. He has been charged for being a sexual predator. His company has been found to have committed fraud, and everyone can see how he has bullied people on a world stage. And I know there are a lot of Americans who come to the UK, and I know they don't all support Trump, but I mean, how does someone with that back catalogue of convicted and very obvious dismal character traits become elected president?
Is that not the price of democracy?
I guess yes, you're right. But I guess what I want Americans to think about is,
Well, a lot of Americans would say, actually, the majority don't support Trump. He got in because of quite a quirky electoral college system and how the voting...
Democracy is in action to get him elected, but his executive orders, where's Congress? That's the bedrock of American democracy. He's using a tool that isn't legitimate for far more than it was ever intended. And I've got a lot of respect for America and things like the Constitution, but they've gone to sleep, just as we're cravenly falling all over him now for...
Someone in this country, an MP charged with rape, I mean, I don't think they went for rape, I think they went for sexual assault, being elected Prime Minister.
We saw what happened with Peter Mandelson, just for being with a convicted paedophile.
His company has committed fraud. They would be barred from office in this country.
The day before he turns up, days before he turns up in a lot of destinations, his moronic sons have turned up to get hotel deals, golf course deals, concessions. An Arabic company had to put in its reports and accounts, because it's listed that they bought $10 million worth of Trump coin, because That's how you get to speak to him.
So
That's
dishonest.
corruption.
And the saddest bit is how we pander to him because of the powerful status of America still in the world. I think we, the sort of moderate minority who are often very silent over these things, have to be more active, because otherwise it's the noisy people who are getting all the attention. And you know, yeah.
Western apathy has got to stop because, you know,
Yeah.
he will only listen to really seismic stock market shifts and real movement against him, some of which you can start to see is happening, but not enough. And most people are craven, like us, the EU.
I couldn't go home without actually showing what's actually important at the moment.
Can I ask, have you come from far? Are you in London or are you...
I'm in London, yeah.
Do you think the Prime Minister, this country, maybe the rest of Europe have done enough to stop what's taking place in Gaza? Have they done as much as they can? Some would say, look, you know, we don't have that power, but what's your view?
I think definitely not enough, but not just British government, every government in Europe. I would say it's a big shame of things which hasn't been done. It should be complete arms embargo, and yeah, they should do something definitely about the Gaza.
In terms of Donald Trump, obviously that's the main thing, stop Trump. He's not going to be stopped, he's here already. But what do you think? I mean, should people not engage with Donald Trump and try and change his view, or is that pandering to a dictator? I see a banner over there.
I mean, it's hard for me to say because I don't really follow Trump. I know that he's in charge of pretty much all the shit what's happening at the moment. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people say that he's the one who can change it all, but I don't think he will do it anytime soon, unfortunately.
Hi, how are you, madam? You come from far?
No,
Whereabouts?
from the sleepy suburbs of Surrey.
Sorry. Very nice, very, very suburban.
Yes,
For you to come out with your banner and your scarf from Surrey,
slightly rude banner as well. I cut my political teeth on the anti-Vietnam War.
oh right, okay.
Yes, so I am very aware of the United States as, in my opinion, the biggest terrorist in the world.
Okay, so why do you think people across the world, governments across the world, are pandering to Donald Trump? He got a 5-star treatment in the Arab world. He's got a 10-star treatment over here. He got the royal family, got to sit in a carriage. People are fawning over somebody who your banner is obviously quite explicitly rude about.
You know, power and money and always attracts sycophantic followers. And there's no question, Donald Trump, or whoever the President of the United States is the most powerful person in the world. Whether we like it or not, the United States is, at least up to now, the most powerful nation in the world.
Yeah, in modern times.
Yes, of course. Even I'm not that old. We're not.
I would never say that.
So yes, they're all groveling and genuflecting to this power because money talks, and he's a bully. But it's not only him. You know, I kind of course, he's the ugliest face of the American presidency. He's the most vulgar face of the American presidency. But let us remember that as far as Palestine is concerned,
Yeah.
Biden was no better, was he? And if we want to go even further back, every single president has been a slave to Israel's demands. Yeah. And there's a lot of controversy or debate about who actually, is it Israel who dominates the U.S. or is it U.S. who dominates Israel? I think there's a little bit of both. As I think, who was it who said, one of the presidents who said that it is our landlocked aircraft carrier, they're referring to it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, sorry.
But let me ask you, right, in all your experience, and you're a very experienced person, do you believe it's the two-state solution that's going to be...
Absolutely not.
No.
Two-state solution is
What's
dead.
your
No,
solution?
no. a one democratic secular state.
Okay, fair enough. We sort of covered a number of issues. Let's go further down. Obviously, people are still gathered and mulling, and you know, if you look over there, there's other sort of mini protests taking place.
You're going to be on that demonstration because we need that to be.
So you can see now, obviously, footage from Donald Trump being in Windsor this afternoon. Obviously, quite a lavish welcome. Lavish welcome for Donald Trump. Keir Starmer's not spared any expense at making sure that he so he feels special.
Isaac Herzog is one of the authors of the genocide, the man who signs bombs before they're put on planes to be dropped on Gaza. And then today he's welcomed Donald Trump, the man who thinks the way to bring peace to Gaza is to wipe out all the Gazans, move them out, and create a Riviera and a golf course in Gaza. What a disgrace that our government is giving audience to those people when it should be standing up to them. Remember that Donald Trump is the president who gave the green light to Israel bombing Iran and bombing Qatar.
So there's Donald Trump obviously inspecting soldiers. This is footage from earlier this afternoon. He'll be preparing for a banquet now, state banquet, hosted by those in the royal family. So yeah, that's where we are. I suppose some would say it's just realpolitik. That's how things are, and that's how things have to be. Obviously, you'll have your own views, and we're not here to tell you what to think. We're just here to help you make your own mind up. One thing is very certain. And earlier shots of him walking in Windsor Castle. It's been a very eventful week in British politics, in world politics. We know the genocide in Gaza is taking a very strong turn, and also Keir Starmer's in deep trouble here. I'll leave you to it with the background of Westminster, the Palace of Westminster, the beautiful Big Ben right behind me, and I'll see you soon. Assalamu alaikum.